I'll be today.
So I want to ask you, Jason, how
I'm sorry. Here, I'm gonna. If you guys right now yourselves, just so that we can cut down the background noise, that'd be really helpful. And so we have a lot of people on the line, which is awesome. And so that's also going to create some audio challenges if everyone's unmuted. So thank you everyone for doing that. And we are live on Facebook now, Steve. I'm also going to record this for people that are missing it.
Okay.
But are you ready to go?
I am, yes.
Okay, let's do it. Here we go.
All right. So obviously we are living in times that are experiencing things that are unlike anything that we have ever experienced before. I've had a number of different calls with people who I coach. We've been talking with our coaches and really just trying to help a lot of people. Yesterday I was on the phone. It's not uncommon for me to have a coaching day where I'm on the phone all day long, but I mean, yesterday I was literally on the phone from 8:30 to 5:30, 8:30 in the morning to 5:30, when I finally just put my phone down and said, that's it. And people are coming from many different angles. This situation, and a lot of things. I'm going to share some of those stories with you, and at the same time, we'll discuss some of the fears and things that people may
do. It.
We're going to also on this call try to address.
We're going to the tire place out by.
No, I'm email on a regular basis. I'm getting dozens of them a day sometimes that, hey, this is happening or this is happening. And I heard, this, and this came from a trusted friend, and this person said this. And, we want to begin and actually hopefully bringing a very trusted source. And I sit there and I sort of scoff at that when people tell me a trusted source gave me this information. But we feel like we have somebody who can really speak some truth into what and a place of position where they have more insight into what's going on, decisions that are being made, and hopefully be able to share some of that with us. But what I wanted to get started with is this. First and foremost, everything that is happening today is going to pass. We don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be 30 days. I don't know if it's going to be 60 or 90 days, but the bottom line is it's going to pass. We've experienced major things in this country before, and in the midst of it, people have fears. They think that life is forever changed, and that things will never get back to normal. But the reality of the situation is these things pass, and we will go back to a time when we're going to be looking back and saying, gosh, did that even happen? It's everything that I thought was going to happen. You could look back, 30 days from now, and what was taking place then. There's no sign of it even happening today. So that day and time is coming where that's going to happen. But the number one thing, and I have been sharing this on every single phone call that I have been having with people, is there's one thing I don't want people to lose sight of, and that is God is in control. He is in control of this whole situation. This is not a surprise to him. He didn't, get caught off guard in the morning and say, uh-oh, what just happened? I wasn't, ready for this. But instead, he knew. He was well aware of this. And the thing that I don't want anybody to lose sight of is that he has a plan for us. He has a plan for all of us. And his plan is a good plan. It's not a bad one. He desires the best for each and every one of us. It is that in the midst of all of this, he is using it for us. Now, how he's using that is going to be different in all of our lives, and that's the beauty of how big he is. He can take a situation like this and use it for our good, and for every one of us, it could look that to be different than it is for somebody else. And so some of the ways that he might be doing, what he might be doing is, some of us may have been working and stuff at a breakneck speed, and this is just an opportunity to slow us down, just to get us to take some time to reconnect with him, to reconnect with our families. He might want us to just begin to reprioritize that. We've gotten things out of whack. He may be using this as an opportunity to cleanse some industries. Many real estate investors are here in this room, but he may be saying, I never intended for some of you to be real estate investors anyway. It's time for you to go home and start doing what I wanted you to do. And he may be opening up doors of opportunity for people, and just new opportunities, and giving them the eyes to see what's going to come from this. And those doors of opportunity might be opening right now as we speak. They're seeing new opportunities. And for some, it's going to be a time of, over the course of the next few weeks, they're going to start to see opportunities, and he'll provide the resources for that. But what the biggest thing that I want everybody to take from that is that he is moving, and he is moving in each and every one of our lives. And if we could trust him, and we could trust that his plan is perfect and it's good, I was just going to touch upon a couple more things. Like, for some people, he might be saying it's time to just reset. Let's reset. Let's hit the reset button right now. And here's your opportunity. He might be asking some people to just work on your business. You've been so busy that you haven't actually been taking care of your business. You haven't been making your business better. You haven't been improving processes or policies. And now is the time to do that. Make your business better, so when all this passes, you're going to be stronger. And so all of these different things that I'm sharing with you right now can apply to some of us in different ways. Personally, I just shared earlier with a group that one of the things that I am doing right now is I'm using this time as quiet to really draw closer and to him, and to living more of my vision and experiencing more life with my family. But at the same time, I have already made some opportunistic moves. I have also positioned myself to take advantage of opportunities that may present themselves to me. But my philosophy is that this is a time for me to draw even deeper into the vision that I have for my life. And I'm not going to be pulling away from that. I'm going to go deeper. And the opportunities that I would pursue would not be an opportunity that would take me away from my vision, but actually give me more of an ability to live it and experience it in a deeper way. And so I want to just encourage everyone to really just take the time to not be fearful, but to know that, hey, God has a plan, and to just take some time to say, God, what is it? What are you doing in me right now? Are you asking me to slow down? Are you asking me to do more? Are you asking me, what are you asking me? And to just work on getting in touch with that. One of the things that I want to just share some stories that I experienced with some students yesterday as I was talking to them. One student, he said to me, Steve, I am so grateful that I joined LifeNair 11 months ago. Because if this happened to me 11 months ago, I would be in a full-on panic right now. I wouldn't know what to do. This would be devastating to me. He said, but instead, I'm in a really good place. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. I've spoken to students yesterday who said, my business is exploding right now. And they just happen to be in an industry where they can sit there and provide a service that people need right now, right here and today. And so they were really excited about what they were doing, but cautious. They were talking to me about strategies, about, here's what my business is doing, but I need to protect myself and make sure these people can pay me. What if they can't pay me? Because they all want more of my services, but how do I do that? And so we were coming up with strategies there. I was helping students to strategize with coming up with their plans. How do they start working with their employees? Having 30 employees who are being affected by this, we need to come up with plans. And we're encouraging our coaches to help their students with developing their contingency plans and how to do these things. But at a minimum, to begin to start taking those steps and not just waiting and not putting them off. But before I go on and I share any more stories, because there is so much information out there, and I shared with you earlier that I'm getting a lot of texts, and people are saying, "Hey, Steve, somebody I know, a trusted person who's in the know, told me that this is going to happen." And then I'm getting another text from somebody who says, I have friends who are telling me that this is going to happen, but I also have friends who are telling me that that's a bunch of BS and that's not going to happen. And people are being torn back and forward. And the fact of the matter is this: none of us really knows what's going to happen. And one of the common things that I keep on getting is, Steve, we're going to be quarantined. We're going to have a quarantine. And the bottom line is it's coming, and it's coming by this time. And when that happens, all chaos is going to take place. And what do we do about that? And here's my personal feelings, but then I want to bring somebody else on. And it is Jason. Can you just check in with me and make sure Vinny is with us?
He is.
Okay. And perhaps make sure he's unmuted. But I'm just gonna throw this out there. There is absolutely no question or doubt in my mind that the discussions have taken place. We would be fools to think that the government hasn't had discussions to say, if we need to have a full out quarantine, we need to implement it. What are the steps that we're going to have to do? Or what will we need to take? But I also wholeheartedly believe that that decision hasn't been made yet either. But they have to plan ahead. You can't just wait until it's too late to say, hey, we're going to do this. And so when people sit here and they're saying, hey, that this is going to take place, I do believe that maybe things are being mobilized in the event that that has to happen. But to assume that that is going to happen, we have to be really careful of. My whole reason for bringing this up is not to discuss, hey, is it or isn't it, but to bring somebody in who can bring some sense to this whole situation. Vinny, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Steve.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before you start speaking some wisdom into this whole situation, can you just give everybody, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and things like that, so they know where you're coming from?
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Vinny Maida, and my background is I was a Marine Corps Intel and Special Operations Officer for 22 years. From there, I went to the Department of Defense, where I was an operations officer, as well as a professionalized intelligence analyst and an executive. And I currently work for the Department of Defense in a consulting role. I've retired from the Marine Corps and the Department of Defense, but they have hired me back a couple of days a week to serve in a consulting role. So my background with this is that I have spent a lot of time working with the federal government on a lot of things. I was at one time responsible for the global continuity of operations for one of our intelligence agencies, a portion of it. And I've also worked with the civil defense and been involved in professional security work. So when I look at situations like this, that's kind of where my bias is. That's where the perspective that I'm going to take. So when we talk about this issue, I wanted to share just a couple of things. And again, this is only one opinion, though it may be a bit better informed than some. It's still only one, but hopefully you'll see that there is some logic and some solid basis for the things that I'm sharing with you. First of all, we are in a pandemic, and sometimes that word itself kind of scares people. But all that means is that we're in a global outbreak of a disease. It's an epidemic that has basically crossed the lines of various countries. It does not give or recognize this disease that we're facing as having some type of supernatural power over us. It's just a statement of the state of the virus. That's all it is when they use that word. For people of faith, as Steve said, if we're fearful, we want to be careful that we're listening to the right voice. If we're listening to the Lord's voice, we shouldn't be fearful. And he's basically told us to make disciples and teach them to obey everything, and he would be with us. And so this is an opportunity for us to teach others and help them to understand what our faith is about. Now, as usual in situations like this, our previously held beliefs are often not exactly right. So in this case, those who thought that people who prepared in any way for things like this were kind of like tinfoil hat people, and those who thought that a pandemic would just immediately end us are both better informed now that neither one of those extreme positions are exactly the case. There's a lot of misinformation out there as well. And I want to make sure that we get some of the facts. Now, one of the things that's been troubling a lot of people is the supply issue. We live in a society where business practices, they practice something called just-in-time logistics. And we have systems that identify shortages and are set to respond on a timeline with additional supply to meet the normal demands. When we run into a situation like this, when people kind of panic, mostly through misinformation, they buy more than they need, we see shortages. Those shortages lead to sometimes more panic and can ultimately lead to things that are worse. But I want to assure everybody that, you know, the trucking lines and things like that are still running. And as long as they can freely move across state lines, which is part of a federal responsibility, we should see the supplies be reinstated, and we should be able to buy the things that we need. And, you know, a little extra. We don't probably need 40 packages of toilet paper, but, you know, 1 or 2 might be sufficient. And also, I've heard a lot of people talking about the Stafford Act, and that we're going to have this big national quarantine and things. So I want to give you a little information about the Stafford Act, and I'm also going to provide you some resources that you can look at. I don't know if you can see this map behind me that's on my wall, but that's actually a map where you can go to, run by Johns Hopkins University, that actually tracks the virus in real time and tells you where all the cases are, what the active cases are, what the deaths are, and I'll give you a link to that as well. But the Stafford Act simply authorizes the delivery of federal technical, financial, logistical, and other assistance to states and localities during a declared major disaster or emergency. FEMA coordinates the administration of the program and the assistance to the states. And the federal assistance is provided under the Stafford Act if an event is beyond the combined response capabilities of the state and the local governments. So there's no inherent capability within the Stafford Act for the government to issue a wide quarantine. As a matter of fact, the Constitution specifically states, and I'm not a lawyer, but it specifically states that any action that is not specifically articulated to the federal government, those authorities belong to the states. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But there has been a study done by Johns Hopkins to look at all the countries around the world. And that study clearly indicated that though no country can be totally prepared for a pandemic, the United States is absolutely by far the best prepared country to deal with it. So one of the things, or some of the things the government has done already, is they early on restricted travel in and out of the country. And those efforts and a few other things that they've done have actually made it better for us and enabled us to respond and limit the spread of the disease within the country. But obviously we can't get everybody. There's also a lot being done in terms of reclaiming vacant government buildings in case there's needed for hospitals. The government and the president and leaders have met with banks, hotel companies, business organizations, the travel industry, and they've had all of that stuff online where you can actually watch it and you can see what's actually being said, what the leaders of industry are saying, what the programs that the banks are putting in place in order to make it easier on people who can't pay mortgages and business debt. So there's a lot of things going on. Now, what can the government do? Well, some of the things they can do, and that I've heard talked about a lot, is they can activate the National Guard. That's under Title 10 of the U.S. Code. Under Title 32 of the U.S. Code, the National Guard can be activated by governors, and that's what you're primarily seeing right now. And the reason is that the National Guard, when they operate under state authorities, have the ability to exercise law enforcement powers. So they can be able to protect food supplies, protect supply lines, ensure that food is distributed properly, and ensure that anybody who tries to take advantage and to loot or steal can actually be arrested. So it basically increases the capability of our police forces, though they remain the primary law enforcement arm of the government in the local sense as well as the national sense. Now, what can the president do? The president and the federal government primarily deal with threats coming into the United States and crossing borders. So the president can restrict somebody from coming into the United States. He can also restrict people from leaving the United States, which he has done to some degree. And he can also, as well as the CDC, can quarantine or isolate people from crossing across state lines, because interstate commerce is a federal responsibility and they can stop people from moving across state lines. However, they can also use the military to cordon off an area, but most of the time what you see, as you see in like New York and the New Rochelle area, is that responsibility primarily falls to the National Guard. So it's the governors really want to retain the National Guard as much as they can, and they're really much more effective in the state role. And you would see, as Steve mentioned, preparations being done and Congress being enacting legislation and things like that more than likely before you would see a national quarantine, because a national quarantine could restrict our commerce and stuff in such a way that it could damage the economy. And our economy is actually what a lot of the world is counting on when this is over to get everything spun back up. There was a $8.3 billion aid package that was passed, and there's a $750 billion package that's being discussed right now. So what about within the government? So for myself, I have been contacted by government leadership. I was supposed to be on leave this week anyway, but I've been contacted, and the government has enacted liberal leave, which means that people can take leave without getting specific permission unless they're in a critical role, in order to reduce the number of people around the federal government so that the government can keep running and providing services. They've modified our work hours so that if you normally work 9 to 5, you can now work 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. in order to reduce the number of people that are in any one space. We're working in teams. So there's a gold team and a blue team, at least in my area, so that the gold team works 1 week, the blue team works another week. That reduces the exposure for infection, but still allows work to get done. They've shut down a lot of conferences and things unless they're absolutely mission critical. They're conducting recall drills to make sure if they need us, they can call us back and bring us all in to take care of things if need be. And they've also implemented a much more strict cleaning regimen. And as you probably have read, the Federal Reserve has given us a number of things that they have done in order to increase the money supply, take some of the similar actions they did in 2008. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I tell you all that because, you know, we live in the best prepared country in the world. We live as people of faith. And we also have businesses that have a very selfish interest in keeping themselves running and taking the precautions that they need to do. And we all realize that things like quarantines limit our ability to provide services. It limits our ability to do commerce, and it limits our ability to recover. So I think it's really important that we look at all of the totality of the circumstances before we allow the fearful voices to drive us in a direction that we don't really want to go. So I have a few references. I won't try and give you the URLs, but if there's a place that they would like me to put them, I'll put the links in there. One of them is
actually, Vinny, if you click on the button at the bottom, there's a chat. In the bottom toolbar, it says chat, and it looks like a little bubble. You can click on chat and enter, just cut and paste any links into that chat bar for people.
Okay.
And so people, so these are references for people to look up your sources that you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Well, and so let me ask you, it sounds like from what I'm gathering from you, it's like, hey, this is a real issue. It's not insignificant. We are facing certain challenges that are relatively unprecedented, although we're very well equipped to handle it. And so without panicking, it's more about preparing, being aware, acting intelligently, and kind of just staying abreast of things without losing your mind. Is that roughly what you're kind of trying to say, or?
Yes. In summary, what I would say is that if you go to the Center for Disease Control site, and they've published these things a lot, and follow those guidelines, they want us to not travel, obviously, if you don't have to. And the reason for that is because a lot of people in their 30s and things like that can actually have the coronavirus, but not exhibit any symptoms and remain and be contagious. For instance, but should you be fearful? I'm 65. My wife is 66 and she has diabetes. Now, I'm taking precautions with her, but I'm going to work, I'm going to the store, I'm doing the things that I need to do, even though my middle son had coronavirus in the beginning of February. Now, my wife and I spent a day with him and his family over 2 weeks after he had the disease, and there was no risk to us because they're not contagious once they go through the regimen. But because it was so early on, he didn't even know he had it because they hadn't, in the early February, he had all the symptoms and they cleared him of having any kind of flu or anything, but they didn't have a COVID-19 test. So I think, we don't want to be operating out of fear, but we want to be operating out of just practical caution, just like we would in any other flu season. I'm also going to provide you a link that compares this disease to everything from the 1918 flu, the SARS, the H1N1, all that stuff. And every generation before us has faced these things. They faced polio, they faced diphtheria, they faced all kinds of things, and they were nowhere near equipped as we are to deal with them from the perspective of research and everything. And they all made it through. And we will too, and we'll do fine as long as we remember that we got to work out of accurate information and follow the precautions given to us from reliable sources.
That's awesome. Thank you, Vinny. I'm also going to post some links in there. So I have found, for everybody following this, and before we move on to another part of this, go to the primary sources of research. Don't rely on the news headlines all the time, because they're somewhat motivated by a number of different things. And so go to the CDC website, go to I found the John Hopkins, and I'll put the link to John Hopkins in there that I found that you shared, Vinny. Thank you. And so, yeah, we need to be cautious, be prepared, but not panicked. And so that's a really objective opinion that you gave, Vinny. I really, really appreciate it. I think that's going to put things into perspective for people who don't have quite the knowledge or exposure to some of these resources that you do. For those of you guys that are in the Zoom live right now, if you go down to the chat bar in the bottom toolbar, click on that and you'll see 2 links I put in there. And anybody else who has valuable links, feel free to put them in there as well for everyone to share. And then we'll make sure these get up on the Facebook Live as well. So that was really, really valuable. Steve, did you want to continue?
Yes. So I want to sit here and I want to just bring up a number of things. So we've sat here and we've talked about fear and how this fear is becoming disseminated. And what we have are a lot of people who are in the midst of that becoming, they're not taking others seriously. And, I don't agree with all of the people around me who are fearful and the things that they're saying and that they're doing, but I want to acknowledge the fact that their fear is real. It's not my place to sit here and judge them or to mock them. Those are some of the things that I'm really hoping that within this community that doesn't take place. Instead, I'm trying to come alongside of people and be compassionate about what it is they're feeling and experiencing today. I'm looking at this as an opportunity to draw closer together. As a Life in Our Community right now, it's pretty amazing to me to see how the groups and students with together in the midst of this, and how they're coming alongside and walking alongside of one another to make the most of this situation. That is together, that is helping the individuals, that is helping to meet the needs of people. I've already have heard of situations where some people are in the coaching groups, we're tight on funds, and this is actually cramping them a little bit more. However, Other people in the group have come along and actually helped fund some people's businesses to help them see this through. So there's a lot of different things that that are happening that I love to see, and it's my hope that, you know, and going back to the questions that I was saying that we should be asking is, God, what are you doing? What are you doing in the midst of this? And just trusting in his plan, that we should be asking ourselves, how do you want me to respond? The one thing that I want to encourage everyone not to do is to make decisions now based off of fear or emotion. Don't make your decisions when they're fear-based. Don't make them when they're emotion-based. Come to the community, come to your group, come to your coaches, you know, talk to them and try to make level-headed decisions rather than quick, rash decisions that are being made out of fear and emotion, which I have watched people do. Admittedly, I talked somebody off a ledge yesterday, and they felt a lot better once they could help to see something a little more clearly. So real quick, why is it that the people who have been in Life in Air for a while, why are they doing so well in the midst of this? One thing and one thing, you know, only. It's, and I don't want to take out the God part, but they have a vision. They are looking beyond this. The people who are living in fear, who are living in emotion, are looking at what's right in front of them right now. And they're forgetting the fact that, hey, there is more. And so our coaches are really helping our students to look at what's ahead, is to look at, you know, first of all, this is going to pass. And if you sit here and you start responding rashly today and you start making bad decisions today, once this passes, you're going to be in a worse position. And so, you know, let's not get too excited about what's happening right now, but let's look ahead. Let's look to the future. Where are we going? What are we doing? And when I have a vision, it's not difficult to just remain on that path. I don't need to have instances like this, that these are bumps in the road rather than detours or roadblocks that are going to keep me from living my life. Instead, it's a bump in the road. We adjust to it, and then we move forward and continue to keep pursuing our vision. So we're looking ahead. We're looking to see what is taking place right now. How is it being used in my life? But how do I factor that into the future? I don't want to stay focused on today. I don't want to be focused on the news. I don't want to be focused on the stuff that is you know, being portrayed right now, because I will make bad decisions if that is the case. So, Jason, anything to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things, you know, and so this is a call that right now there's a lot of Life in Air students on this line, but there's a lot of people that are not Life in Airs also listening in. And I want to reemphasize one of the things that Steve said that really hit home is, like, you know, we've had students that have been diagnosed with cancer that some of you guys know. And we've had them actually say, like, well, I don't really see what changes. And so when you have that kind of confidence and that kind of stability and certainty around your life because you've planned, and that's not to say that this isn't going to affect things or slow you down or make you have to, you know, take a couple detours, but, you know, what you have shouldn't change much. What you're aiming for, what you're shooting for, what your vision is designed to be is not going to change much. And the other thing that Steve didn't mention specifically, but I wanted to highlight is, you know, some of these other things that you all, and I want to continue to emphasize these things. One of the things, you know, one of the Life in Air principles we teach is prosperity through simplicity. So as we have less needs, as we have less overhead in our lives and things are simpler, it's a whole lot easier to navigate. You know, I can tell you for myself as well, if this would have happened to me before I had a chance to do all these things, I'd be a whole lot more stressed than I am now. But I've set things up in this Life in Air way, and so I want to encourage everybody: don't jump ship on whatever you're doing. Continue what you're doing, because living simply is one way to do it. You know, we talk about debt-free investing. You know, I just spoke with a landlord yesterday who has about a dozen or 15 rental properties, and they're all leveraged. And he's like, you know, what am I going to do if my tenants are out of work because their kids are home from school, or because the jobs are laying them off, or they're not asked to go in for the time, and I have these mortgages to make, these payments? And my heart goes out to them because, and frankly, in some cases, they didn't know there was a different way. And so I want to encourage you guys, listen, all this stuff we're talking about here, it's not just for the good times, right? It's not just so you can have this amazing life, and that's great, but it's also for the when life kind of smacks you upside the head a little bit and you go sideways. They're still applicable, they're still valuable, and they're even maybe even more relevant. And so I really want to encourage everybody with that to continue what you're doing. Maybe even like Steve said, this is an incredible opportunity in some ways where we're going to see people that are going to pivot in their life or in their business or in whatever it is, and they're going to prosper, right? They're going to pivot and they're going to prosper. And this is an incredible opportunity for everyone to do that. And I see some people kind of, you see a lot of funny memes on Facebook that are kind of making fun of some of the things, and other people are really stressed. And I don't say one is right or wrong. Some people deal with scary things with humor, and that's okay. I kind of think of like Good Morning, remember Robin Williams in the movie, Good Morning Vietnam, right? And he's trying to make jokes out of some circumstances that were challenging. And so some people do that. And I would just say, this is our chance to not only set ourselves up in a good position, but to pour into other people. Pour into the people that need help, love on people where they are, do what you can to help them wherever they are, whether it's somebody that is really concerned and they need a shoulder or someone to talk to, or whether it's somebody who needs you to run to the grocery store for them, or if it's somebody who, you can help financially or get them around other people to assuage their fears and calm them. This is an incredible opportunity for all of us to just love on people and together come out as a country, as a world, maybe even so much stronger than we were before going to this.
Hey, Steve, would you talk to, because, it had an effect on me. I wasn't in Life and Air back in 2008 when, the last bubble burst, we'll call it. But you spoke on our first call with the coaches about how that the majority of the students, because of the community, they turned out all right. Would you speak to that?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do, and I was actually going to start to transition a little bit to that, Jonathan, so thank you, is that with all of the people who I was coaching, my goal was not to just help them to survive, but to help them to thrive. And, I was helping them to design their lives and their businesses in such a way that they could withstand something like this, that this was just a bump in the road, but they were still going to be focused on living and experiencing their vision. I always had to keep them focused ahead, like I shared earlier, that this is going to pass, and where are we going to be, when this does pass? What opportunities are being presented to us? Are we supposed to slow down? Are you supposed to make your business better? Are you supposed to spend more time with your family? It's not a one size fits all thing. And I'm very careful with that, because we are all different and we all have a different vision for our lives. And so alongside of one another, to walk with each other through this process, to encourage, to build up, to lift up, and to keep each other focused on what's to come, not what's happening right at the moment, was the way that I was able to keep everybody, staying true to their vision and making decisions and living for their vision, rather than living a fear-based life or an emotionally driven, life. And frankly, they all thrived. Everybody did. And the whole group was thriving in a time when people were licking their wounds and trying to figure out what their next steps were going to be. And so, on that note, the one thing that I want to encourage, and I'm so grateful that we've got so many people here right now. I'm taking a little bit of a risk as I sit here and I suggest this right now, but we have been working on a way to pull the entire Life and Air community together and to pull everyone into one place. And the reality of the situation is it's through a mobile app that we have been working on that. It's available on desktop as well, but the mobile app has just been released. Now, we haven't told you about it yet because it has been we're still testing And honestly, we are still working out some bugs and glitches. But as I have been suggesting to all of my coaches and everything, I want to start getting people in there, because the more we use it, the more we're going to figure out what's wrong with it. But this is a great opportunity for all of you to just to get into that mobile app. The moment I got on this call and to start seeing so many people jumping on here right now actually really excited me, because I haven't had a really good way or opportunity to sit here and communicate with the community at large for a long time. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and say for years that my personal sphere of influence have been a handful of coaches and have been the handful of people that I actually coach. Beyond that, I haven't been able to reach most of you. And it's my heart's desire to be able to connect with all of you on a level and to be there for you and to help you. And that was the whole idea behind Life in Air and Life in Air coaches and everything too, is that you've got your coach, but you also have the community. You have all of us. And I want to be there for you guys. So I want to encourage all of you that, you can go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, and you can download the app, and we can continue these conversations there. It is a community app that, it's going to be like a Facebook almost type feed that you will have within there. Depending upon where you're at within Life in Air, your coach might have a private group, or not there yet, but it will be there soon. We're still working on getting some things in there, but we can continue these conversations and be able to be there for one another and to just help support one another. And, my commitment is to being able to communicate with all of you and through that, and to be there for you, and to just walk with you through this whole thing. And I just want to leave it with this word of encouragement that, it's going to pass. God is in control, and he is using it for good in your life. He wants the best for you. Don't lose sight of that. And, there's a Christian song, and I'll tell you, not too many people have heard it. And it's not that old of a song. It's fairly new, but it is called "Strip It All Away." And I got to tell you, I sit there and I sing that song and I pray that song. And then when I sit there and I'm praying that song, I'm just asking God to take away anything that's in me that keeps me from having the kind of relationship I'm supposed to have with him. And it's a hard song to pray, to say, God, strip it all away. Anything that is not of you, take it away from me. And so in the midst of this, I'm like, okay, maybe is he taking something away? Is he answering my prayer? And I have sat here and I've even taken a piece in that if in fact that is what God is doing in me, if God is going to take away so much from me, then that is exactly what I've been asking for. And if that's what he wants for me, I'm okay with that. And I will have peace with that. If he decides to bless me with more, I will have peace with that. And I just want to put my trust that whatever it is he desires for me is going to be the best. I know that that's the case and the truth for all of you as well. And I want to encourage you to just embrace that, but to seek it out. And the way that you respond to that is going to determine how well you come out of this on the other side. The way that whether or not you embrace it or you fight it is going to determine where you are when all of this starts to go away. And so I do want to say one more thing. Some of you are fearful of just potentially losing everything. We come up with these worst case scenarios of what that could be. And I actually challenged a couple of people yesterday and I said, okay, let's assume that that's true. Let's assume that you lose everything. I want you to just picture in your mind that you wake up tomorrow and that all those things that you just thought you're going to lose, that you lose it all. How does it feel? How would it feel to wake up in the morning and, the slate is cleaned, you lost everything, then what? And every person was like, well, I guess it's not that bad. I'm making more of it than what it needs to be. And I believe there's a lot of truth to that. And so I want to encourage all of you that sometimes we play with these things in our minds that are just not true. Don't entertain those thoughts. Don't hold on to them. Instead, have your vision, look ahead at what it will be. And, fear is a thing that will paralyze you. Fear will keep you from moving forward. And I know I keep on saying one more thing, and I want to say one more thing. I hope that this story demonstrates exactly what it is that I'm trying to communicate to you right now. 2 of our trips ago to Guatemala, we go in with the team to Guatemala every year, and we go in, we serve down there, and we do a missions trip. And a dear student who I've worked with now for many years, we were all together, and we are doing cliff jumping. And we are literally, jumping from, 35, 40 feet high into the water. And some people just embraced that and just went and ran and just jumped and, had an awesome time. Jonathan's raising his hand. Just had an awesome time, doing that. And others were sitting up there and looking down and very fearful. And they wanted to do it. Everybody else was doing it, but they were scared and they weren't going to do it. And so there were 2 people who were getting ready to leave, and they hadn't jumped yet. We'd been there for hours. And one of them on multiple occasions went back about 10 feet, started to run, and then stopped right before the edge. And then sat back and took deep breaths and then backed up again and started running for the edge and then stopped and had to take some deep breaths, and he didn't make the jump. And so I went on up to him, and I'm his coach. And I said, "You know what the problem is?" And he said, "What?" I said, "You're focused on the fear. You're focused on what it might feel like when you hit the water." And I said, "I want you to stop focusing on what's right in front of you. And I want you to focus on how good it's going to feel when you go home to tell somebody you jumped off of that cliff. I want you to focus on what's ahead. I want you to focus on the other side. I want you to focus on what the feeling is going to be like when you're climbing up and swimming out of there after you did it." And within 15 seconds of that, he went and he jumped. And today he gets to brag about it and he gets to tell people. But had he been focused on what was right in front of him at the moment, he would never be able to talk about that story or anybody about it today. And so it is so important to not be focused on the fear that's right in front of you, but to be looking ahead at what's on the other side, because there's great things for us on the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. Listen, we have a little bit of time. This may be chaotic, but we can try to do it. Does anybody have a question or comment they'd like to share? Just unmute yourself, and if we have more than one person kind of start speaking at once, we'll have to ask someone to kind of just wait. Does someone have something right now?
Yeah, I would just like to say, when we're thinking about fear, understand that is the opposite of faith. Fear is mentioned 366 times in the Bible. That's one for every day of the year, including leap year. And it's always in the tune of fear not. It's not what the Lord wants for us. We're not looking to him when we have fear. So let's just keep that in mind.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Hey, actually, Kale raised his hand. So this is some technology here that I'm unaware of. So I guess you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Kale, why don't you go ahead? Are you there?
Kale, we can't hear you, man. You're on mute somehow still on your side.
Let me check. Okay, yeah, Kale, I guess just try again if you can figure out how to unmute yourself. I'm not figuring out how to do this here. Does somebody else have something?
I just want to encourage all of you guys to what Steve was saying. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Right, what Steve was saying about focusing, not on fear. This is the time where you will get to see which you're going to feed your mind with, right? So be careful what you feed your mind with. And when we're focusing on, like, one of the things, for those of you who know me, you know, I talk a lot about mindset. And one of the quotes that I live by, I always tell my students is, where focus goes, energy flows. That's from Tony Robbins. So I just want to encourage you guys in this particular time to, like, look at it from this particular aspect, because we're emotional human beings, right? We make decisions based on emotions. And if you're feeling fearful, you're going to make certain type of decision. If you're feeling empowered, you're feeling excited, or you're feeling like you're like, I got this, I can handle this, you know, and focusing what you can control on and what you can do, you're going to, you know, make much better decisions. So, you know, focusing on, like, you know, this could be a great opportunity to pour into your kids if you have kids, right? Because they might be looking for your leadership as a dad or a mom in your household, you know, whatever. So just be careful what you feed your mind with. That means you don't feed it with the stuff that's out there on social media, and you feed it with something that is going to empower you, that's going to help you, that's going to drive you to where you want to go, focusing on that vision and things like that. So
That's great.
that's that.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Peter. Kale, we got you back. What did you want to share?
Yeah, man, I'm here. How about it? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Super. So I had mentioned, I think, to you, Jason, and to Steve at the 3-day, we're a pretty unique group. We're a pretty small part of the population, and we've got a pretty special mindset and a pretty special viewpoint. And I think that ultimately our roles in our communities are going to be huge in the coming weeks and months and years. There's going to be a lot of people that are lost. They're going to be looking for a way. They're going to be looking for some help and some direction. And the best way we can do that is just by demonstrating by our actions. Live life like we know how. Just be the light in the darkness is really, I think, the most important thing that I can share here.
That's awesome. Thank you, man. You're totally right. Totally right. And almost, you know, I almost wonder, I feel like to some extent, you know, and we talk about this at Life and Air as well, like it's not about us, right? And so the more, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but sometimes the more challenges you seem to have, like taking that focus off of ourselves, talking about what Peter's talking about as well, like not only feeding our mind with quality input, right? Get away from the Doritos equivalent of our social influence, but also giving and sharing and being that light to those around us is an incredible opportunity and honor that I think everyone here can embrace fully, regardless of what's going on in your own life. Awesome. Who else? You know, one thing that struck me actually while you guys were talking is, what can we learn during this? What are the lessons we can take away from this? Like, you know, for instance, I'm thinking of some things. One of my friends, Muhammad, was sharing some things, and he's like, you know, some of the things I'm learning from this right now is, number one, like we're all equal, regardless of our upbringing, our religion, our occupation, our how well we are off financially. We're all in the same boat here. Ask Tom Hanks, right? And for him, he's like, hey, this reminded me that we're all connected, and what one person does has an effect on somebody else. It reminded him how precious our health is, how short life is, you know, how important our family and our home life is, all these things. And so I would ask you to start asking yourself, like, what are some lessons you can learn from this? What are some powerful takeaways that you can be empowered by what's happening rather than discouraged? And so that's going to take a little bit of time. And once you can start thinking of it that way, I think it's going to be a completely different experience for you, as well as all the people around you too. Anyone else have anything?
I would just say that for those of you who are in Life on Air, who are, you know, have visions, Life on Air visions, this is a great time to go and read your visions. You know, start reading your visions now more frequently. Read them, put it in your phone, put them, you know, in front of you, and start reading them, because you created those visions to help you get to where you want to go. And when you created them, you were in a great state. So start reading those visions to help you get to, you know, through the day or to the next day or whatever it might be.
Yep. Steve, do you have anything else?
The number one thing is I just want to encourage everybody to continue to just stay connected to level-headed people. If anything, that if you hear things that are happening or hear things, run it by some of the people who you really trust before you act and take action. We're here for you. And I want to just continue to encourage that. And, you know, I saw that as soon as I mentioned, hey, download the app, a whole bunch of people went and downloaded it, which is encouraging. I just want to encourage more of you to take advantage of that, and let's keep the conversation going. Ultimately, that is where we're going to be moving all of the Lifeonaire communications to, is into the app. And again, you can access it from a desktop, but the whole goal is to really begin to build that community through there. And you know, we're looking forward to having you all be a part of it.
Steve, that's a huge point. So to clarify, whether you're a student of Lifeonaire or not, you can get this app, and it's free. There's no charge. You get access to the app. And if you want, and listen, this is an incredible opportunity for all of us to come alongside each other and to further the conversation, to help each other, to support each other, to provide objectivity and support. And so as that happens, though, guess what? When life does go back to normal, you're still going to get the benefit of that. So get plugged in, get around other like-minded people that want to see you do well and to help you, because that could be a lifeline for a lot of folks to be part of that community. No charge at all. Please go over there and enjoy that. That's a service for you that we want to help you with. All right. If nobody has anything else, we can wrap it up. Going once.
Jason.
Yes.
Hey man, I got one last thing to share. It's just a little bit of positivity here at the end, but it's just an example of the opportunities that are out there. And if we look around us, a lot of us are able to help other people. I shared a link with you about a hospital that was running short on ICU valves, basically valves that control IV bags and oxygen flow for respirators. And a local business found out about it, and they had a 3D printer and a scanner. They went down to the hospital. They scanned the device. They scanned that valve. And within a few hours, they were recreating that valve so that patients could continue treatment, because it's one of those things where it's like a needle, you can't reuse it. They were able to print those, and they had them in service relatively quickly. So it's a situation where, you know, we have resources. We didn't wait for the government to come fix it for us. This guy obviously jumped out there and saw a need, and he helped out. So it's one of those great things where there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of this, as well as some challenges, but there's always a silver lining. Man, I'm so glad you said that, because it just reminded me of, like, I've seen some of these NBA players that are now paying the salaries of all the workers at the arenas and stuff like that. Like, people are this beauty, you know, sometimes people can be so cynical and like but when you see this beauty emerge from challenge sometimes in people's hearts and the humanity, and it's so encouraging sometimes. And yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
You know, there is a call that's later today with a bunch of Lifeonaires that have short-term rentals that are trying to kind of put that spin on it. There's going to be some displaced patients, stuff like that. So though we've got cancellations months and months out for the travel, there could be some opportunities to help here. So we just need to, like, use our intuition, our innovation during these kind of times to figure out how we can use what our resources are that we have to serve. We've been counting on other countries for a long time of, you know, supporting us so that we could lower our dollar, raise our profit margins. There's some opportunity to bring some things back home here and really serve. So you look for those. Keep your eyes open to that, everyone, and use this network. We have a great network here to lean on each other and share as we figure those things out. So
yeah. Awesome point, Jonathan.
Yeah.
And you could do that, yeah, and lean on other people, go over to the app and have those discussions and conversations.
Oh, I want to also say thank you, Vinny, man, for being so transparent. And man, I feel like we got an ace in the hole with having you, man. What add you are to our resource to you know, have you to come and share and explain things to us. And also you are the inside man. So thank you for including us. We appreciate you, Vinny. And hoorah to you.
Hoorah. Thanks, Jonathan.
All right, everyone. If you'd like to continue this discussion, head on over to the app. I'm sure there'll be plenty of things going on there. Steve just texted me that he's having a challenge with his connection, so I'll just wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day. Be safe. Love on everyone you can. Take care of yourself, and we will catch you soon. Take care.